The Women's Motocross Championship, or WMX, is already started, so join me as we learn all about the women in SMX. Motocross has always been considered a man's sport. Motorcycles, loud engines, speed, competitiveness, aggression, even dirt and mud are all things that are usually associated with guys. It seems the only time the sport really acknowledges women is when they need to attract teenage boys, by wearing hot pants and bikinis and handing out Monster Energy drinks. They're used as trophy girls and sign holders. Motorcycle magazines use them to pose with dirt bikes and other parts in order to sell them to more men. I remember having this poster in our garage growing up. I thought it was so cool that she was on the same three-wheeler my dad raced. It seemed like this was the only role that women could hope to have in the sport. But that's not because girls have not been interested in motocross racing, it's because they've been purposely excluded. Women racers have been there all along, fighting twice as hard to get a fraction of the opportunities men have been given. So let's take a look at the history of women in motocross. Throughout history, society has claimed many reasons for banning women from sports. They have deemed them too fragile, delicate, or emotional to participate in sports. It wasn't seen as ladylike or proper to do these things, especially when it came to straddling something between their legs. Take horseback riding. The only socially acceptable way for women to ride horses was to ride side saddle, in order to protect a woman's virtue. Riding astride was widely considered vulgar and was even mistakenly believed to damage a woman's virginity and fertility. This idea was still circulating when the bicycle was introduced. Women were stigmatized as feminists if they rode bicycles. And even in this medical journal from 1895, doctors explained in great detail how women could use the saddle of a bicycle to self-stimulate themselves while riding over bumpy roads.
It's the bee's knees, Meg. Oh, when you rattle it around just right. Oh, my God. I mean, you remember when we had that old car with the bad shocks and I used to take the old dirt road on purpose? Meg?
I love you.
If they had this much concern over a woman riding a bicycle, a vibrating motorcycle between their legs would be a national scandal. It seems like we have a tradition of banning minorities from sports for false reasons. We first banned black people from sports, and then women as well, and today it's trans athletes. And I'm sure history will look back on that just as fondly too. But despite the many roadblocks, women have always fought to compete in any motorcycle racing that men did. Clara Wagner was the daughter of George Wagner, the owner of Wagner Motorcycle Company. In 1910, Clara Wagner, at 18 years old, put the company's motorcycle on the map by achieving a perfect score in the FAM 360-mile endurance race from Chicago to Indianapolis, but was denied the trophy because she was a female. There's nothing more fragile than a man's ego when they lose to a woman. And in every type of motorcycle racing, there was always a woman that could prove they could do it too. Desert racing pioneers Lynn Wilson and Mary McGee were the first female duo who rode and finished the Baja 500. Mary McGee would later ride the Baja 500 solo.
Come to find out, I was the first person to ride the Baja 500 solo. Not woman, but person. I'm quite proud of that feat.
Debbie Flying Angel Lawler was a daredevil stunt performer who jumped 101 feet over 16 Chevy pickup trucks, actually beating one of Evel Knievel's records. This bothered Evel Knievel so much that he put together another world record jump a month later just to reclaim his title by jumping 17 trucks. As far as land speed racing, Marcia Hawley set the land speed record for a single-engine steamliner motorcycle, and in doing so, became the first lady who broke Bonneville's elite 200-mile-per-hour club. And as far as motocross racing, when it came to America in the 1960s, women were not allowed to get an AMA professional license. But in 1971, Carrie Clyde became the first woman to receive a professional AMA motocross rider license. This is only because the AMA didn't know she was a woman based on just her name, so the paperwork went through. When she showed up at her first race in Unadilla, she was told she could not race, and they revoked her license. Well, Carrie went to court, and she eventually won her license back. This, along with the passage of Title IX, opened the door for other women, and created a massive boom for women's motocross in the 70s and 80s. In 1974, the first women's motocross championship in the United States took place, called the Powderpuff Nationals, in which Nancy Payne ended up winning the first one. Luckily in 1975, they got a better name, because they changed it to the Women's National Motorcycle Championship. This is where we saw some of the most influential names in women's motocross history. Sue Fish, also known as the Flying Fish, won the Women's National Championship in 1976 and 1977. Also won events like the Super Bowl of Motocross Women's Championship in 1975 and 1984 in the LA Coliseum. She dominated from the very beginning and became the example for women in this new sport.
How are you feeling now?
I feel great.
Which led the way for Mercedes Gonzalez, who was a 9-time Women's Motocross National Champion from 1985 to 1991, which is the most by any female competitor in American motocross history. Then after dominating women's motocross, Gonzalez made the decision to compete in the Superlights Cars class of the Mickey Thompson Off-Road Series, where she became the first woman to win a Mickey Thompson off-road event in 1994. Some women still wanted to compete with the men, and in 1983, Doreen Payne was the first woman to ever qualify for a men's national pro outdoor motocross event. She entered the race under the name D. Payne, so they wouldn't know she was a woman. Otherwise, she would have been automatically disqualified and sent to the women's motocross class. The 80s was looking very good for women's motocross. Women broke through this male-dominated sport by debuting in halftime exhibition races, showing up at supercross events, and in 1982 even got to go to an international race in Japan, and got great media exposure during the 1983 Women's Motocross Nationals. Camera crews filmed the race, interviewed riders, even had Chippendale dancers for the trophy presentation. Women's motocross truly became an event in and of itself. Unfortunately, women's motocross took an unexpected step back in 1988 with the murder of race promoter Mickey Thompson.
Michael Goodwin could finally be indicted by a grand jury for the 1988 ambush murder of racing legend Mickey Thompson and his wife Trudy, who were shot outside their home by 2 gunmen who rode away on bicycles.
Mickey Thompson saw the importance of a women's division and actively promoted women in his races. Mike Goodwin and other promoters would not include women's classes in their races, and some felt women did not belong in motocross at all. Race opportunities and sponsors dried up. In the 90s, one of the only options open for women was to compete with the men, and most of the time that meant alongside teenage boys in the amateur classes at Loretta Lynn's, since women were not looked upon as professionals. But even at the amateur level, many girls started making a name for themselves and dominating against the boys. And if there's one thing that makes guys insecure, it's losing to women.
Look, guys would tear you up if you went out and tried to race. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are. They'd do anything to beat you.
Yeah, but they'd have to keep up with me first.
Everyone welcomed the creation of the Women's Motorcycle League, or WML, in 1996. This established an off-ramp for women to get out of amateurs and into a semi-professional league. They officially became part of the AMA Pro Motocross Championship with the creation of the Women's Motocross Association, or WMA, in 2004. It was later changed to what is called now WMX in 2009, when it was sold to MX Sports. And this was the time when many iconic racers exploded onto the scene, making women's motocross relevant again, with not only racing, but the X Games as well. Like Tara Geiger, who is a 3-time amateur champion, who was also the first female gold medalist in a moto event at the X Games. In 2013, in a sign of female empowerment, Tara was photographed nude on her dirt bike for the ESPN Bodies issue. There was also Vicky Golden, who was the first female member of the Metal Militia, and she was also an X Game gold medalist. And Vicky made history as the first female to qualify for an AMA Supercross night program in 2015. And also Jessica Patterson, who is a 7-time women's motocross national champion. And in 2010, Jessica was signed to a little factory-supported team called Star Racing Yamaha. I wonder if anything ever became of that little team. This next one is my all-time favorite women's motocross racer, Ashley Feilich. She's not only a 4-time national champion, but also deaf and communicates using sign language. She had to eventually learn how to feel the vibrations on the bike to know when to shift. And because she couldn't hear the other riders, she has to look for other clues like shadows on the ground and stay in her line to be safe. And she became the first woman to be signed to a full factory team, the Honda Red Bull Racing Team, in 2009. And in the WMX championship that year, she had the championship lead going into the last round. But then she unexpectedly crashed and broke her collarbone.
Ashley Feilich has gone down somewhere on the track.
Despite the pain, she somehow got back on the bike and still finished the race to win the championship. Usually, riders call it quits when they break their collarbone, but not Ashley. You see, not everyone can be as tough as a woman. Right, Deegan? She inspired a whole generation of women and girls to pursue motocross. Eventually, in 2020, she got married to her wife Lindsay, and one of her mentors, Travis Pastrana, even attended the wedding. So if you think about it, she dominated the sport of motocross as a disabled gay woman. If that happened today, the Trump administration would blow a gasket, screaming DEI. But just as things were looking better for women's motocross, the late 2010s saw less and less support for WMX. There was a lack of TV coverage. Races were moved to Friday late in the day when most of the fans have already left. Not surprisingly, riders and sponsors fell away. And without financial backing, it became impossible to justify continuing the series. While WMX shut down at the end of 2018, and there was no more pro-women's motocross racing in the United States, only the amateur series continued. But just when all hope was lost, 2024 had a resurgence of WMX after a 5-year hiatus, and it came back as a separate amateur series, where in the end, Lachlan Lala Turner was crowned champion. But then in 2025, WMX was officially promoted as an SMX series by MX Sports, running their nationals on the same weekend as AMA Pro Motocross. The plan was that women would run their motos on Friday, and the men would run their motos on Saturday as usual. But the real breakthrough for WMX was during the Thunder Valley round. Friday got rained out, so instead of canceling, MX Sports decided the girls could ride at the end of the day on Saturday, and they aired the race live on Peacock, and fans voiced their appreciation. The track was the roughest it was all day, but the girls put on a great show. And it helped that Michaela Nelson and Kylie Stallings battled all moto for third place, only to crash into each other at the last lap.
This story keeps going. Stallings, side by side. They knock each other down for third.
Allowing an injured Jordan Jarvis to sneak by for third. Charlie Cannon, despite being injured, gave a brief battle for the lead, but ended up finishing second, behind the reigning champion, Lachlan Turner.
It is Lachlan Lala Turner with the victory.
The Thunder Valley performance was enough to get some serious buzz about the series, so MX Sports gave the WMX another shot to race live on Peacock at Ironman during their second moto, and then again at Budds Creek, where Lachlan Lala Turner defended her championship. Well, it's safe to say it was a success. The fans were craving WMX after its long absence. They now have a new sponsor with Synchrony Bank to inject more money into the sport, and all their second motos will be aired on Peacock during the race on Saturday. They have 6 rounds total, 3 in June and then 3 in August. Plus, they have an additional expedition race at the end of the series for the final round of the SMX motocross playoffs. So we'll see how that goes. So far, they've already had 2 races this year, and Lachlan Turner is so far undefeated, looking like the Jet Lawrence of the class. It's exciting to see the sport growing and to get to know this new generation of riders. Hopefully, we can continue to encourage women's involvement and inclusion in the sport of motocross. And that's up to us to make them feel safe and to give them the respect they need. And sometimes that means that we need to change the way that we talk about them.
But Roost, dude, sitting behind somebody at Washougal, like, you just have to be a straight up man.
You know, and make a man out of it, because you got to be a man in this sport.
Now, I know they didn't mean anything by it on purpose. It's just kind of a turn of phrase that we have to man up or toughen up. But subconsciously, that's telling everyone that if you're a woman, you're not tough or you're even weak. So if you're a woman in the sport of motocross, you're going to feel less than, or that you don't really belong. Another thing that we need to stop doing is thinking that motocross is only for boys.
And then RV, you got your boys, you're racing dirt bikes, which I had girls, so we're not racing dirt bikes, right? So I'm going to soccer fields, I'm going to gymnastics, and now we've been big into lacrosse for a long time. I always thought I would have a boy, right? I always thought I'd be spending time at a dirt bike track. That just didn't work out for us.
I don't know why McGrath automatically counted out motocross as an option for his daughters, because he definitely knows about women's motocross. I mean, he was in the greatest motocross movie of all time, Motocrossed, which is the Mulan of motocross films. It is about a girl who disguises herself as a boy in order to compete. And there's even a cameo with Steve Lamson, baby Travis Pastrana, and Jeremy McGrath. And maybe there is a longer conversation that we just don't know about, but I think this is a similar mentality that a lot of parents have when it comes to their sons and daughters about motocross. And that type of thinking needs to start changing. And another thing that makes the sport look a little immature is the Monster Energy girls. It would make the sport look a lot more professional if they phased them out, kind of like how F1 did. But if it's something super ingrained into the culture of the sport, it's fine. But in fairness sake, we should have a few Monster Energy guys for the girls as well, kind of like they did at the event in the 1980s. And if you're a reader, I recommend a couple different books, such as Invisible Women, where women can feel sometimes invisible in a world that's designed for men. And also, Ashley Feiglick's autobiography, Kicking Up Dirt, where you can learn more about her amazing motocross career. In the end, we just need to be welcoming to new talent and fans from all walks of life, not just the stereotypical ones we've always catered to. And that's why it's important for SMX to acknowledge things like Black History Month, Women's History, Veterans Appreciation, and Pride Month, in order to include those that may feel left out. But luckily, these women didn't listen to the negative voices, and now they're generating growth for their series and their fans. Well, thanks for watching. I knew I couldn't include everyone, so let me know in the comments who your favorite women's motocross racer is. Enjoy the races, and I'll see you next time.